Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by green fields and tall shady trees, there lived a clever little crow. The crow was shiny black with feathers that gleamed in the sunlight. His wings were strong, and his eyes were bright and full of curiosity. He loved to fly high in the sky, circling above the fields, looking for food and water. But one very hot summer day, the sun was burning brighter than ever before. The ground cracked with heat. The leaves of the trees drooped, and even the rivers had dried into little streams. The animals of the village were thirsty, and so was the crow. He flapped his wings and flew from one place to another, hoping to find even a single drop of water. He searched the ponds, but they were empty. He looked into the wells, but they were too deep, and he could not reach. He hovered over the fields, but there was not a single puddle left to drink from. His throat felt dry, and his beak clit with thirst. Still, the crow did not give up, because he was not only thirsty but also very clever. He believed that if he kept searching and thinking, he would surely find a way to quench his thirst. And so he continued his flight, wings beating against the hot summer air, determined to discover some water. The crow flew further, across the edge of the village, past the dusty roads, and the little huts where people sat fanning themselves in the shade. He could hear the sound of goats bleating weakly and cows mooing softly, for they were thirsty under the burning sun. The crow felt tired, but he reminded himself, if I stop searching, I will never find water. I must be patient and keep looking. He soared over the fields once more, his sharp eyes scanning every corner. At last, something caught his attention near the side of a farmer's house. There, shining faintly under the sunlight, stood a clay pot. The crow's heart leapt with hope. A pot may have water inside. He could joyfully and quickly glided down to the ground. His claws clicked as he landed beside the pot, and he eagerly hopped onto its rim. He bent his neck to peek inside, and yes, he could see water at the bottom. The cool liquid glistened, inviting him to drink. But to his disappointment, the water was very low. The crow stretched his neck as far as it could go, opening his beak wide, but no matter how much he tried, he could not reach it. His beak tapped against the inside of the pot, but the water was just too far down. He tried dipping his head deeper, even flapping his wings to balance himself, but still it was no use. The crow's heart sank for a moment, but he quickly shook his feathers and thought, I must not give up so easily. There must be a way to reach that water if I use my clever mind. The crow hopped down from the rim of the pot and stood on the ground, tilting his head thoughtfully. He knew that complaining would not fill his beak with water. If I cannot reach the water, then I must find a way to bring the water up to me, he said to himself wisely. He looked around carefully, studying the area. The farmer's yard was quiet, with only a gentle breeze moving the dry grass. Suddenly, his sharp eyes spotted something useful small. Round pebbles scattered all over the ground. At first, they looked ordinary, but to the clever crow, they seemed like little helpers sent by nature. He picked one up with his beak and dropped it into the pot. Plop, it fell inside, making a tiny splash. The crow quickly looked down, and to his delight, the water rose just a little. His eyes sparkled with excitement. So this is the way. If I put more stones into the pot, the water will rise higher and higher until I can drink it. The crow's wings fluttered with renewed energy. He hurried around the yard, picking up pebbles one by one and dropping them into the pot. Each stone made a cheerful sound of plop, 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 and each time, the water climbed higher, like a reward for his hard work. The crow's beak felt less dry already, just knowing that he was close to success. Other birds watched him from a distance, curious about what he was doing, but none dared to help. The crow didn't mind. He was determined and focused, knowing that patience and cleverness were the true keys to solving problems. The crow worked tirelessly, picking up stones in his beak and flying back to drop them into the pot. Each trip took effort because the pebbles were not very light, and the heat of the summer sun made his wings heavy. Still, he refused to stop. With every stone he dropped, the water rose just a little more, and this gave him courage to continue. Soon, the bottom of the pot was filled with many pebbles, and the water had risen enough that the crow could see it more clearly, sparkling like a tiny treasure in the sunlight. His heart filled with hope, and he thought proudly, "My hard work is not wasted. If I keep going, I will soon be able to drink." But just then, a small sparrow who had been watching from a nearby tree flew down and chirped. "Why are you wasting your time, Crow? The water is too far down. You will tire yourself and still not succeed." The crow only smiled and replied calmly, "Patience and effort always bring results. You will see." The sparrow shook her head and flew away, not believing in the crow's plan. Yet the crow did not lose faith in himself. He knew that wise birds use their minds instead of giving up quickly. He picked another pebble, dropped it into the pot, and heard the cheerful splash again. Slowly, the water crept higher. It was still not enough to drink, but he could see that success was coming closer with every step he took. The crow realized something very important. Sometimes, the path to solving a problem is slow, but steady effort makes even the hardest task possible. The crow kept working, his feathers ruffled by the hot wind, but his spirit remained strong. As he picked up more stones, he began to notice how heavy his wings felt from carrying them again and again. His claws ached a little from landing on the rough ground, and his beak felt tired from gripping each pebble. But every time he looked into the pot and saw the water rising, he felt refreshed inside his heart. "Just a little more, and I will taste the cool water," he whispered to himself. A group of ants crawled nearby, and one of them shouted up to him, "Why do you work so hard alone, Crow? The sun is hot, and you may faint from exhaustion." The crow chuckled softly and answered, "It is better to work hard now than to regret later. If I faint from thirst, then what use is resting?" The ants nodded and carried on their way, impressed by his determination. Soon, the crow's idea started showing greater results. The water level in the pot had risen enough that the surface rippled. Close to his beak, his eyes shone with joy, and he flapped his wings happily. "I am almost there," he cawed. A butterfly fluttered past and stopped to watch. "How clever you are, Crow," she said admiringly. The crow felt proud but also humble, and he replied, "It is not just cleverness, little butterfly. It is patience, hard work, and hope that make things possible." The butterfly smiled and flew away, carrying the lesson with her. The crow then dropped a few more pebbles, and the sound of the splashes was like music to his ears. The water was now very close to the rim of the pot, so close that the crow could almost taste it. His long journey, his sweat, and his patience were about to reward him at last. At last, the crow leaned over the pot again. This time, his beak touched the cool surface of the water. Oh, what joy filled his heart! Carefully, he dipped his beak and took a long, refreshing sip. The water was cool, sweet, and more precious than anything he had ever tasted. His dry throat felt alive again, and his tired wings seemed stronger. He sighed happily. All my hard work was worth it. He drank again and again until he was satisfied. Then he lifted his head proudly, drops of water shining on his beak like little pearls. Just then, a pair of pigeons who had been watching from a rooftop cooed in amazement. "Clever Crow, you truly showed us how. Wisdom and patience can solve even the hardest problems," they said. The crow smiled and replied, "My friends, thirst made me think, and thinking made me work. Without patience and effort, no problem can be solved." The pigeons nodded and repeated his words too, themselves so they would not forget. The crow then looked down at the pot filled with stones and thought, "This lesson is not just for me. It is for anyone who feels hopeless when faced with a challenge." He realized that when others doubted him, he did not stop. Instead, he believed in his own mind and worked steadily until he succeeded. The gentle breeze suddenly felt cooler. The sun seemed a little softer, and the whole world appeared kinder because the crow was no longer thirsty. With his thirst quenched and his heart light, he flapped his wings joyfully and rose into the sky once more, leaving behind the pot that had taught him the true value of patience, wisdom, and hard work. As the crow flew above the village with a full belly and quenched thirst, he thought about the adventure he had just lived through. The hot sun no longer felt like an enemy, but more like a reminder that challenges come to test our strength. If I had given up when I first saw the water was low, he murmured to himself, I would still be weak, thirsty, and hopeless. But because I chose to think and work, I found the answer while flying. He passed over the same sparrow who had doubted him earlier. She was sitting sadly under a tree, too tired to search for water. The crow swooped down and said kindly, Little sparrow, do not sit here in despair. I found water in a pot, and I made it rise with stones. The sparrow's eyes widened in surprise. Truly, I thought your plan would fail, she admitted. The crow smiled gently. That is why we must never judge an idea too quickly. Sometimes what seems impossible only requires patience and effort. The sparrow thanked him for the advice, and she promised herself to be braver and wiser next time. The crow then continued his journey, meeting more animals along the way. To each one, he shared the story of how he solved his problem with wisdom and hard work. Soon, word spread among the creatures of the village. The thirsty crow had shown them that no difficulty was too great if faced with courage, clever thinking, and steady effort. The crow felt proud but also grateful, because he knew that every challenge was a chance to grow wiser. The crow story soon became more than just a tale about drinking water. It became a lesson for everyone who heard it. The next morning, a group of young birds gathered around him, eager to learn. They chirped excitedly, Tell us again, wise crow, how you solved your problem. The crow perched proudly on a branch and began. When I was thirsty, I did not complain or give up. Instead, I looked for a solution. I saw water in a pot, but it was too low to drink. Instead of crying, I thought of an idea. One by one, I dropped stones into the pot until the water rose high enough for me to drink. The young birds listened, with wide eyes, nodding at every word. One little robin asked, But wasn't it very hard work? The crow chuckled. Yes, it was. My wings grew tired, and the sun burned me, but I kept going. That is the secret, little ones. Hard work may seem difficult at first, but the reward is always sweet. Another bird asked, And what if the stones had not worked? The crow answered wisely, Then I would have thought of another way. A clever mind never stops trying until it finds success. The young birds chirped happily, feeling inspired. They promised themselves that they would never give up easily when faced with problems. Just then, an old wise owl who had been listening from a nearby tree spoke in his deep voice. Clever crow, you have taught not only the young birds but also all of us. The world belongs to those who keep trying with patience and wisdom. The crow bowed his head humbly, for he knew that his story was no longer just about his own thirst. It was about the power of never giving up. Days passed, and the tale of the thirsty crow spread beyond the village. Even animals from the nearby forest came to hear it. A family of rabbits hopped close, asking, Is it true you raised the water with stones? The crow nodded proudly. Yes, little friends. When the water was too low, I did not give up. I used what nature had given me, stones, and made the water rise. The rabbits were amazed, and one whispered, We never thought of using what lies around us. We always wait for help. The crow smiled and said, That is another lesson sometimes. The answers to our problems are right in front of us. We only need to look carefully and use them wisely. A deer, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward and added, The crow is right. Nature always provides, but we must use our minds to understand how the young animals cheered. Their hearts full of new courage, Even the older animals, who had once thought the crow's task was foolish, admitted their mistake. "We doubted you, Crow," said a wise old tortoise slowly. "But you have shown us that wisdom is greater than strength, and patience is greater than doubt." The crow bowed politely, not boasting, but feeling grateful that his hard work could inspire so many. He realized then that the true reward was not only the water he had drunk, but also the lesson he had shared. The crow's eyes gleamed as he thought. One clever idea, when shared, can change many lives from that day on. The animals carried his story in their hearts, and whenever they faced a challenge, they remembered the clever crow and his pot of water. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the hills and painted the sky with colors of gold and pink, the crow perched on the highest branch of a neem tree. He looked out over the fields, the huts, and the forest beyond. A cool breeze brushed against his feathers, and he felt peaceful. He thought back to the scorching day when his throat had burned with thirst and his wings had grown heavy with effort. How close I was to giving up, he whispered to himself. And yet, by believing in my mind and never losing patience, I found the answer. He realized that every creature faces a moment of difficulty, but only those who keep trying discover the treasure hidden inside the problem. Just then, the sparrow he had once spoken to flew up beside him. She bowed her head respectfully and said, "Dear Crow, your story has changed me. When I feel weak, I remember your patience. When I face a problem, I remember your cleverness. You gave us more than water you gave us." Wisdom, the crow's heart, swelled with joy, but he replied humbly, "Wisdom belongs to all of us. I only reminded you of what you already had." Inside, the stars began to twinkle above, and the animals of the village whispered softly about the clever crow who had taught them a lesson for life. From that day on, whenever the young ones grew restless or hopeless, the elders told them, "Remember the crow who dropped stones into a pot. Remember that cleverness, hard work, and patience can solve any problem." And so, the story of the thirsty crow lived on, not just as a tale of a bird in a pot of water, but as a timeless reminder that no matter how dry the world may seem, hope, effort, and wisdom can always bring forth the water of success.
In the thick green jungle, where sunlight barely touched the ground, lived a proud lion. His golden mane shone like fire, and every creature called him king. The lion believed no one could challenge his rule. He roamed freely, roaring loudly, declaring the jungle belonged to him alone. But in another corner of the jungle lived a strong, stubborn tiger. His orange and black stripes glowed in the shadows, and he feared no beast. The tiger believed he, not the lion, was the true ruler. His sharp eyes always searched for ways to prove his power. One scorching afternoon, the lion went to the river to drink. His paws pressed into the soft mud as he bent down. Just then, the tiger appeared from the trees, his eyes glowing. Both reached the river together, staring at each other with anger burning deep inside. The tiger growled, "Step aside, lion. This water belongs to me." The lion snarled, "Foolish tiger, everything here belongs to me. I am king." Their voices echoed through the jungle, frightening monkeys, parrots, and deer. The river bank trembled as two powerful rulers prepared for a terrible fight. The tiger pounced first, striking with powerful claws. The lion leaped sideways, dodging, then countered with a roar and a slash of his paw. Dust rose around them as they clashed. The sound of battle filled the forest. Growls, roars, and furious snarls shook every leaf and branch. The tiger's fangs sank into the lion's shoulder, drawing blood. The lion roared in pain but fought back, slashing across the tiger's chest. Birds flew away in panic. Snakes slithered deep into their holes, and even crocodiles in the river slid silently beneath the water to escape danger. Both beasts were wounded, but neither would surrender. The lion pounced again, pressing the tiger into the ground, claws digging deep. The tiger twisted fiercely, kicking with his hind legs, throwing the lion off. The ground shook as the two giants circled each other, eyes blazing with fury. Hours seemed to pass as they fought under the blazing sun. Sweat, dust, and blood covered their bodies. Nearby, hyenas and vultures gathered quietly, watching, waiting for the loser to fall. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, unsure which mighty ruler would finally claim victory today. At last, both beasts collapsed, exhausted and bleeding. They stared at each other, breathing heavily. In that silence, they realized fighting further meant death for both. Neither would rule, only the scavengers would feast. Slowly, they stood and backed away, their strength drained, but their pride still burning. From that day onward, the lion and tiger no longer fought over the river. They learned the jungle was vast, with room for both. Sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to stop. And so, peace returned, and the jungle thrived again under the balance of two rulers. In a quiet forest lived a young deer named Aaron, gentle and curious. He loved running through the meadows, chasing butterflies, and drinking from the cool stream. Though he had friends among the animals, he often felt lonely. Deep inside, Aaron longed for a true companion who would never leave. One day, while wandering near the riverbank, Aaron heard a faint cry. Following the sound, he discovered a small injured rabbit named Luma, trembling under a bush. Her paw was hurt, and she looked frightened. Aaron's heart softened immediately. Carefully, he bent down and offered comfort with his eyes. Luma was wary at first, unsure if the tall deer meant harm, but Aaron's gentle voice calmed her fears. Slowly, she stepped forward. Aaron helped her drink water from the stream and promised to protect her. It was the beginning of an unlikely friendship, forged in kindness and trust. Days passed, and Suri's wings began to heal. She would sit on Kavi's head, telling stories of the skies and faraway lands. Kavi listened with awe, his heart filling with joy. Though they were so different, together they created a world of laughter, trust, and love beneath the forest canopy. One evening, a wildfire broke out in the forest. Flames spread quickly, animals panicked, and smoke filled the air. Kavi trumpeted loudly, guiding smaller creatures towards safety. Suri flew above, warning others with sharp cries. Together, they became protectors, saving lives while risking their own in the chaos. Exhausted but determined, Kavi pushed fallen logs to clear paths. Suri guided him, her sharp eyes spotting dangers ahead. Amid fear and destruction, their bond grew unshakable. They realized they weren't just friends, they were each other's strength. Every step forward proved love could conquer even fire's merciless rage. After hours of struggle, the fire finally died down. The forest was scarred, trees blackened, but many animals survived thanks to Kavi and Suri. Yet the giant elephant worried. What if one day Suri flew away? The thought of losing her pierced his heart more than the flames ever could. Suri noticed his sadness. Perching on his trunk, she whispered, "Kavi, no matter how far I fly, you will always be my home." Her words touched him deeply. Tears rolled from his eyes, not from fear, but from relief. For the first time, Kavi felt truly loved. As seasons changed, flowers bloomed, and the forest healed. Kavi and Suri became legend symbols of friendship that defied differences. Together they inspired others, the strong to be gentle, and the small to be brave. Their story proved that love knows no size, shape, or boundary when hearts are true. Years later, animals still spoke of the giant elephant and the tiny bird who saved the forest together. Their friendship was a reminder that even the unlikeliest bonds can bring hope. Kavi and Suri lived side by side, teaching the world that love and loyalty make life truly beautiful. Deep inside the jungle, the trees whispered with the wind, their tall branches blocking most sunlight. Birds chirped in hidden nests, and colorful butterflies danced between flowers. The air smelled of earth and rain. Among the shadows, a little monkey named Riku swung happily, searching for ripe bananas. Riku loved exploring every corner of the jungle. He often played by the river, where fish sparkled like silver. His laughter echoed across the trees. But one morning, while playing, Riku heard a strange roar. It was loud, powerful, and unlike anything he had ever heard before. Curious and a little frightened, Riku climbed the tallest tree to see. From above, he spotted a tiger prowling near the riverbank. The tiger's golden fur shimmered under sunlight, and its eyes were fierce. All the animals nearby hid quickly, leaving the jungle eerily silent except for the tiger. Riku's heart pounded. He had heard stories about tigers from the elders, yet this tiger didn't look hungry, it looked lost. Its heavy steps were slow, and its face seemed tired. The monkey wondered if the tiger needed help, but fear kept him frozen high in the branches above. Suddenly, the tiger slipped near the muddy bank and let out a painful growl. Riku noticed its paw was bleeding, caught on a sharp stone. Compassion overcame his fear. The little monkey thought, even a tiger needs help sometimes. Slowly, he climbed down, holding leaves he had collected earlier. The tiger growled softly when Riku approached, but didn't attack. Instead, its eyes showed pain and trust. Carefully, Riku placed the broad green leaves over the wound. He pressed them gently, remembering how his grandmother monkey once healed scratches. The tiger stayed still, allowing the tiny healer to work. As time passed, the bleeding stopped, and the tiger let out a deep sigh. It bent its head toward Riku in gratitude. The monkey smiled nervously but proudly. Other jungle animals, watching secretly, were amazed. They had never seen such courage nor a friendship forming between predator and prey. From that day forward, the tiger and Riku became unlikely friends. The tiger protected the little monkey from snakes and eagles, while Riku guided the tiger to sweet water and safe resting spots. Their bond grew stronger, proving kindness could erase fear, even between the fiercest enemies in nature. One evening, a terrible storm struck the jungle. Trees fell, rivers overflowed, and many animals were trapped. Riku and the tiger worked together, Riku calling frightened animals, and the tiger clearing heavy branches. Together, they saved many lives. The jungle soon began to respect their powerful and unique friendship. When the storm ended, sunlight returned, painting the jungle golden. Animals gathered to thank Riku and the tiger. The monkey climbed the tiger's back, smiling with pride. In this jungle, Riku shouted, "We are one family." The tiger roared loudly, echoing through the trees, sealing their eternal bond.